The grocery store was busy that evening, lights buzzing softly, carts rolling across the floor, and people rushing to finish their shopping. Among them stood a single dad, holding a small basket close to his chest. His shoulders looked heavy, not from a basket, but from the weight of life itself. Inside the basket were only a few items, the most important being a pack of diapers. He had walked through the aisles slowly, picking up one thing, putting it back, calculating prices again and again in his mind. Every step he took carried hesitation. Every glance at the shelves reminded him of the limits he lived under. His little baby sat in a stroller nearby, making small sounds, unaware of her father's worry. He bent down, touched her tiny hand, and whispered softly, "It's okay, I'll get this for you." His voice cracked, but he forced a smile, as if trying to assure himself as much as his child. People around him barely noticed. For them, it was just another evening. But for him, it was a test of survival, a test of dignity. When he finally reached the checkout line, he placed the diapers and 2 small food items on the counter. The cashier greeted him politely and started scanning. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a few crumpled bills and coins. He smoothed the dollar bill on the counter with shaking hands, trying to make it look presentable, as though it carried more value if it looked neat. His heart pounded as he watched the numbers on the screen climb higher. The total came, and it was more than he had. His face went pale. He pushed the coins forward, counted them again quickly, and whispered to the cashier, "Is this enough?" His voice was quiet, almost lost in the noise of the store. The cashier glanced at the money, shook her head gently, and said, "I'm sorry, it's short." Her voice wasn't harsh, but the words cut deep into him. He lowered his eyes, his throat tightening. Behind him, people in line shifted impatiently. A woman sighed loudly. Another man muttered something under his breath. The father felt the sting of judgment pressing down on his back. He bent over his baby again, avoiding eye contact with anyone, and stroked her cheek. She blinked at him with calm, innocent eyes, unaware that her father was fighting to hold himself together. "I'll just keep the diapers then," he said finally, trying to sound firm. But the tremor in his voice betrayed him. He pushed the food items aside, as if giving up pieces of himself. The cashier nodded and adjusted the bill. His baby whimpered softly, almost like she sensed the loss. The father kissed her forehead and whispered, "It's okay, we'll manage." The moment grew heavier when the cashier repeated the total for the diapers alone. He counted again, but still he was short by a small amount. His hand shook more as he picked up one coin, then another, desperately searching his pockets for anything extra. He found nothing. His eyes stung, and he clenched his jaw hard, refusing to let tears fall in front of strangers. The line behind him grew restless. Someone coughed loudly in frustration. Another person tapped their foot. He swallowed his pride and said quietly, "I'll come back later then," reaching to take the diapers back. His voice was almost broken, each word heavy with defeat. But just as he was about to step away, he felt a presence behind him. A man, tall and sharply dressed, stood watching. His suit was crisp, his shoes polished, but his eyes held something deeper, something more human than wealth could hide. He had been silent this whole time, observing every detail, every word, every gesture the father made toward his child. Unlike the others in line, his expression carried no impatience, only focus. The father didn't notice at first. He was too busy trying to hold his baby close, too busy pretending that nothing was wrong. But the man behind him didn't move, didn't sigh, didn't complain. He simply stood there, watching with an intensity that felt unusual in such a mundane place. His gaze wasn't filled with pity, but with recognition, as if he had seen this struggle before. The father pressed a kiss on his baby's head again, whispering, "I'll find another way." His voice was soft but heavy with exhaustion. At that moment, the man behind him finally took a step closer. His shoes clicked lightly against the floor. The sound made the father glance back for the first time. Their eyes met for only a second, but it was enough. The father quickly turned away, embarrassed, not wanting sympathy from a stranger. The air grew tense, though no one knew why. The cashier waited, the line grew longer, and the father stood frozen between pride and need. The man behind him cleared his throat gently, as if preparing to speak. The father gripped the stroller handle tighter, ready to walk away. But then a calm, firm voice broke the silence. "Leave everything on the counter." The words were clear, steady, and filled with authority. Everyone in line froze. The father's heart skipped. The cashier looked up, surprised. The man who had been silent until now had finally spoken. The father froze when he heard the words behind him. His hand was still gripping the stroller handle, his shoulders stiff, as though his body didn't quite believe what his ears had picked up. "Leave everything on the counter," the voice repeated, calm but firm. The cashier hesitated, her eyes flicking between the single dad and the man standing behind him. The dad turned slowly, and for the first time, he really looked at the stranger. The man was dressed in a tailored suit, neat but not flashy, the kind of clothing that stood out in a simple grocery store. He carried himself with quiet authority, but his eyes were not cold. They held a steady warmth that contrasted sharply with the rushed, impatient expressions of the other customers in line. The dad shook his head quickly, embarrassed. "No, it's fine. I'll just take care of it another time." His voice was tight, almost defensive. Pride mixed with shame inside him. Accepting help felt like admitting failure, and failure was something he had been running from his whole life. The man behind him didn't move. He simply repeated, softer this time, "I said leave everything on the counter." His tone wasn't arrogant, but it left no room for argument. The cashier's hands paused midair, unsure of what to do. The father's baby let out a small cry, as though sensing the tension in the air. The father bent down quickly, stroking her tiny hand, whispering, "It's okay, Shu." His heart was racing. He could feel people watching, whispering, their curiosity growing. He stood up straight and faced the man again. "I can't accept that," he said firmly, though his voice shook slightly. "This isn't charity. I'll manage." The man's expression softened, but his voice carried even more weight as he replied, "This isn't charity. It's respect." The father blinked, not sure what to say. Respect? That word hit differently. No one had ever used it in this context before. For a moment, silence fell across the line. Even the impatient customers stopped grumbling, their annoyance replaced with curiosity. The cashier finally spoke, clearing her throat. "Should I ring it all up then?" The man nodded once, decisive. "Everything. Don't leave a single thing out." The father raised his hand slightly, as if trying to stop it, but his voice cracked when he tried to protest again. "Please, I—" The man cut him off gently. "Look at your daughter," he said, his eyes flicking toward the stroller. "Does she deserve less because you're trying to carry the world on your shoulders? Let me do this." The father's chest tightened, his throat burning as he glanced down at the baby. She was staring up at him with wide eyes, her little fist curled around the blanket. He swallowed hard, unable to find words. The cashier continued scanning the items. The beeps echoed loudly in the father's ears, each one like a reminder of his struggle. He felt the weight of a moment pressing on him, his pride battling with the reality of his child's needs. The man behind him reached into his wallet casually, pulled out a sleek card, and handed it over. "Put it all here," he instructed. His tone was simple, final. The father wanted to stop him, but his body wouldn't move. He stood rooted in place, caught between humiliation and overwhelming relief. The cashier swiped the card, and in seconds, the transaction was complete. Bags of food and diapers sat neatly on the counter, waiting. The father stared at them, unable to believe they were his to take. The man finally stepped closer, his voice lowering so only the father could hear. "Sometimes, strength means accepting help when it's offered. Don't mistake pride for weakness." The father opened his mouth, but no words came out. His chest rose and fell heavily, his eyes what though he tried to blink it away. "Why?" he whispered finally. "Why would you do this for me?" The man looked at him for a long moment. His expression was unreadable, but there was a shadow in his eyes, like he was remembering something from long ago. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he gestured toward the bags. "Take them. You'll understand later." The father hesitated, but finally reached for the bags, his hands trembling as he lifted them. He mumbled a quiet, broken thank you, but it didn't feel like enough. Nothing felt like enough. The man gave a small nod, then leaned slightly toward him. "When you're done, I'd like to speak to you outside." The father froze again, clutching the stroller handle tightly. His heart pounded harder than before. Speak to him? Why? He pushed the stroller forward slowly, carrying the bags, still shaken by everything that just happened. The eyes of the crowd followed him, whispers trailing behind. Some looked impressed, others confused, but no one said a word aloud. Behind him, the man followed at a calm pace, his steps steady, his presence unshakable. As the father reached the store's exit, he looked back just once. Their eyes met again, and the man gave him the slightest nod, as if reassuring him that this was only the beginning. The evening air outside the store was cool, carrying a faint breeze that rustled the paper bags in the father's trembling hands. He stopped near the sliding doors, unsure whether to wait or to hurry away. Pride told him to leave quickly, to put distance between himself and the man who had just paid for his groceries. But something else, curiosity, gratitude, or maybe even hope, kept his feet rooted to the ground. The stroller's wheels clicked softly against the pavement as his baby squirmed inside, letting out a tiny cry. He bent down, gently adjusting the blanket around her. "It's okay, we're fine," he whispered, though his voice betrayed his unease. He wasn't sure if he was speaking to her or to himself. Behind him, steady footsteps approached. The father straightened, his grip tightening on the stroller handle. The man in the suit stepped out of the store with calm composure, carrying nothing in his hands, not even a shopping bag. His presence alone was enough to draw attention from passers-by, but his focus was fixed entirely on the father and his child. "You didn't have to wait," the man said softly, his tone carrying neither arrogance nor pity. "But I'm glad you did." The father swallowed hard. I don't know what to say. You didn't have to do that back there." His words tumbled out awkwardly, heavy with both gratitude and discomfort. "I can't ever repay you." The man shook his head slightly. "I didn't do it to be repaid. I did because I know what it feels like to stand where you just stood, to have people staring, whispering, judging, to feel small when all you're trying to do is protect someone who depends on you." The father frowned, his eyes narrowing with disbelief. "You? In that suit?" He gestured vaguely, his voice tinged with doubt. "You don't know what it's like to count coins just to buy diapers." The man's expression didn't change, but his eyes grew distant, as though looking into a memory. "I know more than you think," he replied quietly. "There was a time when I had nothing. I worked long nights, slept in my car, and scraped together enough to eat once a day. No one helped me then. That's why I help now." The father blinked, caught off guard by the honesty in his voice. For the first time, he saw not just wealth in the man, but a story, a struggle hidden beneath the polished exterior. The baby let out another cry, and the man crouched slightly, lowering himself to her level. His voice softened. "She's the reason you fight so hard, isn't she?" The father nodded, his throat tightening. "She's all I have," he admitted. "Every day, I wonder if I'm enough for her." "You are," the man said firmly, his gaze steady. "But even the strongest need support sometimes." The father felt his defenses weakening. His pride, which had always been a shield, suddenly felt like a barrier keeping him from something important. He shifted uncomfortably, then asked, "Why me? You could have just walked past like everyone else." The man stood straight again, his voice low but clear. "Because I saw myself in you, and I couldn't just walk away." The father's chest rose and fell heavily. The weight of those words sank deep, stirring emotions he hadn't allowed himself to feel in a long time. Gratitude, relief, and even a flicker of hope. The man took a step closer. "Listen," he said, lowering his tone so only the father could hear. "You don't know me, and I don't expect you to trust me right away. But if you're willing, I'd like to talk again. Tomorrow. I might have something that could change things for you and your daughter." The father's eyes widened. "Change things? What do you mean?" "You'll see," the man replied simply, offering no details. "Meet me at this address." He pulled a small card from his pocket and held it out. The father hesitated before taking it, glancing at the embossed letters. It was the name of a large company, one he had heard of but never imagined stepping foot inside. He looked up in shock. You're with them?" The man gave the faintest smile, though his eyes remained serious. "I'm not with them. I lead them." The words hit like a wave. The father blinked rapidly, almost in disbelief. The man who had stood behind him in the grocery line was no ordinary stranger. He was the CEO of a company known across the city. For a moment, silence stretched between them. The father's mind raced. Why would a man of such stature care about someone like him? "I don't understand," the father whispered. "You don't have to," the CEO said calmly. "Not tonight. Just come tomorrow. You'll understand then." The father glanced down at his baby, who was now calm, her little fingers gripping the edge of the blanket. He looked back at the card in his hand, feeling the weight of possibility pressing against the weight of doubt. The CEO gave a final nod. "Think about it. Whatever choice you make, I respect it. But don't let fear or pride stop you from giving her a better future." With that, he turned and walked toward a sleek black car parked nearby. A driver opened the door for him, but before stepping inside, the CEO looked back once more. Their eyes met, and in that silent exchange, the father felt something stir, an invitation, a chance. The car pulled away, leaving the father standing in the dim parking lot, the card heavy in his hand, his baby watching the world with innocent eyes. He whispered to himself, "What am I supposed to do now?" The next morning, the father woke before sunrise. He hadn't slept much. All night, his mind replayed the scene at the store, the man's steady voice, the card now lying on the small kitchen table. He had stared at it for hours, torn between pride and possibility. Now, in the gray light of dawn, he glanced at his daughter asleep in her crib, her tiny chest rising and falling peacefully. He whispered to her, "Should I go? What if it's real? What if it's not?" His voice cracked, heavy with uncertainty. But when she stirred slightly, her hand curling around the blanket, he made up his mind. He couldn't let doubt steal this chance, not if there was even the smallest chance of giving her a better future. By mid-morning, he stood outside the tall glass building whose name was engraved on the card. He felt small in front of it, like a man who didn't belong in a place polished and towering. People in suits walked briskly past him, badges around their necks, phones in their hands, barely noticing him. He tightened his grip on the stroller handle. His daughter blinked up at him, curious about the new world of busy streets and shining doors. Taking a deep breath, he walked inside. The lobby was wide and gleaming, with marble floors and a chandelier that caught the light. He felt his worn shoes squeak awkwardly as he stepped forward. Behind the front desk, a receptionist looked up. Her smile was professional, her tone polite. "Can I help you, sir?" He cleared his throat, nervous. I'm here to see." He glanced down at the card in his hand. Him. The CEO. His voice almost faltered on the last word. The receptionist raised her brows slightly, then picked up the phone. Within seconds, her expression changed to one of surprise, and she nodded. "Yes, he's expecting you. Please take the elevator to the top floor." The father's heart skipped. Expecting him? He hadn't even been sure the man remembered. He pushed the stroller into the elevator, the doors closing with a soft hum. The numbers ticked upward, and with each floor, his nerves grew stronger. When the doors opened, a quiet hallway stretched before him. At the end, large double doors stood open. Inside, the CEO sat behind a desk, not hidden in shadows of power, but waiting, as if this meeting mattered to him. The father stepped in cautiously, the stroller wheels squeaking on the polished floor. The CEO stood, walking forward with an easy smile that didn't feel forced. "I'm glad you came," he said warmly. The father nodded, unsure of how to respond. His throat was dry. "I wasn't sure if," he stopped himself, shaking his head. "I almost didn't come." "I expected that," the CEO replied gently. "It's not easy to trust a stranger, especially one who steps into your life the way I did." The father shifted uncomfortably, his eyes dropping to the floor. "Why me? Out of everyone you could notice, why did you stop for me?" The CEO studied him carefully, then spoke with a calm conviction. "Because I saw a man who wasn't giving up. You could have left that line in shame, but you stayed for your daughter. You didn't ask for help, even when you needed it most. That tells me everything about your character." The father's chest tightened. He looked down at his baby, who was now babbling softly, as if unaware of the gravity of the moment. The CEO continued, "I built this company on people like that. People who fight even when no one sees them. People who don't quit. That's why I wanted you here today." The father blinked, unsure if he understood. "Are you saying?" "I'm offering you a chance," the CEO said firmly. "A job here. Nothing handed to you. No shortcuts. Work that will pay you fairly and give you stability. You'll have to prove yourself, but I believe you can." The father's mouth opened slightly in shock. "A job? Here? But he looked down at his clothes, plain and worn. "I don't belong in a place like this." The CEO stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Belonging isn't about what you wear. It's about what you're willing to do. I've had men in expensive suits who quit the moment things got hard. I'd rather have one man like you than 10 of them." The father's throat burned with emotion. He shook his head slowly. "I don't even know where to start. I've done small jobs here and there, whatever I could find. But this." The CEO placed a hand lightly on his shoulder, steady and reassuring. "Then start here. Learn. Grow. Don't do it for me. Do it for her." He nodded toward the baby, who was now giggling as if sensing the warmth in the room. Silence filled the space for a long moment. The father blinked rapidly, fighting the sting in his eyes. Finally he whispered, "Why are you doing this for me?" The CEO's expression softened, and for the first time there was a flicker of pain in his eyes. "Because once, when I needed someone to believe in me, no one did. I promised myself that if I ever had the chance, I wouldn't let another man walk that road alone." The father felt the words settle deep inside him. Gratitude surged through him, mixing with disbelief and hope. He nodded slowly, his voice trembling. "I'll do it. I'll work. I won't waste this chance." The CEO gave a small smile. "That's all I wanted to hear. Report here tomorrow morning. We'll find a place for you to begin." The father exhaled shakily, the weight of years of struggle pressing against the possibility of something new. He glanced at his daughter, who reached out her tiny hand as though grasping the future itself. He whispered to her, more to himself than to anyone else, "Maybe things can change." The CEO watched quietly, his own expression unreadable but proud. The next morning felt different. The father woke with a nervous energy he hadn't felt in years. His alarm rang before sunrise, but he was already awake, sitting at the edge of the bed, staring at the card on the table. The letters seemed to shine more brightly now, as if carrying the weight of a second chance. He looked at his daughter sleeping peacefully, her tiny breath steady and calm, and whispered, "Today is for you." He dressed in his cleanest shirt, though it was still worn at the edges. He carefully brushed it out and polished his old shoes until they at least looked respectable. He packed a small bag for his daughter and dropped her off with a neighbor who often helped watch her. As he kissed her forehead, he promised, "Daddy's going to make this work. I'll come back stronger." When he arrived at the tall glass building, he felt the same knot in his stomach as the day before, but this time it carried hope instead of just fear. The receptionist greeted him warmly, as if she had been instructed to expect him again. "Good morning. They'll show you where to go." She made a quick call, and within minutes, a man in a company badge approached, shaking his hand firmly. "Right this way. The boss told me about you." The father's chest tightened at those words. The boss told me about you. Someone important had spoken his name with respect. That alone felt like a miracle. They led him to a large open floor buzzing with activity. Phones rang, keyboards clattered. People moved with purpose. At first, he felt overwhelmed, out of place, but then he reminded himself. He wasn't here to blend in. He was here to prove himself. He was assigned to a position assisting in logistics, a role that required organizing shipments, tracking inventory, and making sure the system flowed smoothly. It wasn't glamorous, but it was stable, important, and above all honest work. At first, he stumbled. The computer system was unfamiliar, the pace fast, the demands high. But instead of shrinking back, he asked questions. He stayed late, taking notes, studying every detail so he wouldn't repeat the same mistakes. Each night, when others left for home, he remained, learning line by line, determined not to waste the chance given to him. Weeks passed, and something began to change. His coworkers noticed his effort. They saw the man who never complained, who stayed until the job was done, who treated every task as though it mattered. Slowly, the whispers that once followed him in grocery lines turned into nods of respect in the hallways. The CEO watched quietly from a distance. He didn't interfere, didn't hand out favors. He simply observed, letting the father earn his place on his own merit. One evening, as the floor emptied, the CEO walked by and saw the father still working. He stopped, leaned on the desk, and said, "You don't have to prove it all in one night." The father looked up, sweat on his forehead, papers spread out in front of him. "I'm not proving it to you," he replied softly. "I'm proving it to myself." To her. He gestured to a small photo of his daughter he had taped to the corner of the desk. The CEO's eyes softened, and for a brief second, something like pride flickered across his face. "That's the right answer," he said quietly before leaving. Months later, the father's life looked completely different. His fridge was full. His bills were paid. His daughter had new clothes and toys. The weight that once bent his shoulders had lifted. He even found himself smiling more, laughing freely when his daughter played. One evening, he stood in the same grocery store where everything had changed. He walked confidently down the aisles, his cart filled not just with diapers, but with food, fresh fruits, and things his daughter would love. At the checkout, he paid with ease, his card sliding smoothly, no hesitation, no counting of coins. The cashier recognized him, her eyes widening slightly as she remembered the man who had once come up short. But now, he wasn't that man anymore. As he pushed the cart toward the exit, he paused for a moment, looking back at the counter. His eyes grew misty, remembering the humiliation, the whispers, and then the voice that had cut through it all. Outside, his daughter giggled in the stroller, and he crouched beside her. "Do you know how far we've come?" he whispered, brushing a strand of hair from her forehead. "All because one person decided to see us, to believe in us." That night, as he tucked her into bed, he realized the truth. Life had not suddenly become perfect, but it had shifted. A door had opened, and he had walked through it. The CEO, miles away, in his own home, sat by a quiet window with a glass of water in his hand. He thought of the father and child, and a small smile formed on his face. He didn't need thanks. Seeing them rise was enough. The father, lying awake in his own modest apartment, felt a peace he hadn't known in years. He whispered into the silence, "I'll never waste this gift." And in that moment, the story of a broke single dad wasn't about struggle anymore. It was about dignity restored, hope reborn, and the power of a single act of kindness to change two lives forever.